You gotta wake up to a world that's real. You gotta rise up and make it feel. Life in full measure is more than just pleasure. Wake up and live.
Hello and welcome. Today is Thursday, April the 2nd, 2015. This is Paul Sandhu coming to you with a new episode of Wake Up and Live Radio. And to wake up, make our listeners up out of the fog of the mainstream media, I have on the line with me today, V, the Guerrilla Economist. V has been gracious enough to appear on my program several times in the past, and his information that he shares is much valued by myself and my listeners. So without further ado, hello and welcome, V.
Paul, it's a pleasure to be on. I love being on your show, man. It's a lot of fun. I just want to say hello to all the listeners, and thank you for having for giving me the privilege to be on and to share a lot of the information and a lot of these things that have transpired the last couple of weeks with all of you.
That's good, V. That's the purpose of doing these programs. Is I was actually watching this interview yesterday with Jim Rickards, who I believe is a spook. Anyhow, so all the information that he was coming out with is something we've already talked about last year. And I said, man, this
Johnny come lately.
Yeah, exactly.
Jimmy come lately.
I said, so once this information is put out in the alternative, arena, then I guess these guys have to come out and start talking about it at some point in the future. Just like, for example, this story about the Russian sanctions. You know, how we heard all last year, oh boy, Russia is hurting and, their economy is going down the tubes, Putin won't survive. Yeah, all these horror stories in the mainstream media. But just yesterday I read about in Bloomberg that Russia's economy is doing great. The ruble is on the rise. It's one of the premier stock markets in the world, and they're recommending it as a destination for investment. So what do you? So that's another example of how the information that we talked about many months ago, that Russia is not hurting, they're actually going to be in the driver's seat, is now being reported in the mainstream media. So what's been new on your radar lately, V, and where would you like to begin?
I mean, I guess since, we here in New York and you up in Toronto, we're starting to enter into spring. We supposedly have entered into spring, and things are beginning to thaw, Paul, and the ice is starting to melt. And the temperatures are starting to go up. Let's start with something that I called, almost last summer, as oil prices plunged. And I said that, the oil business and the oil financials, these companies will drag on. They'll survive. The drilling companies will survive through the winter time because it's going to get cold. It's going to be another cold winter. You're going to have, and that demand, even though the prices are not going up, because there's such a gulf, there's such an excess reserve of oil and natural gas, the demand for natural gas will still be there to heat homes and things of that sort. That's going to keep the shale oil industry booming just through the wintertime as they start slowly cutting their workforce. And now we're in the thaw. And I said, you know what, by springtime, you're going to start seeing some major layoffs coming, and then by summer, we're going to be in the thick of it. And lo and behold, Paul, already there is a wave of bankruptcies, okay, that have been happening right now within the shale oil industry, okay? And people don't realize this, okay? When I talk about shale oil to most American listeners and even some Canadian listeners, they have this idea that is just, it's Alaska, it's Texas, it's Louisiana, it's Alberta. People fail to realize that the petroleum industry in the United States affects 27 states. 27 states.
Oh, really? I was not aware of that.
Yeah, most people aren't. And people don't realize that 27 states view petroleum as vital to their economy because they have a taxation upon the extraction of the oil and the selling of it and all the fees and all the reselling that's going on. They are making money. Okay, so, and one of the things I've said to your audience is oil is one of the most financialized instruments in the world. And when you look, here's the thing, folks, okay, and this is what I need the audience to understand. In today's market, when you financialize something, you weaponize it, okay? When you financialize something, you weaponize it. Now you might say to yourself, V, what the heck are you talking about? You know, I'm the guy who coined the term weaponized banking, okay? God willing, I'm going to be writing a book about it soon. Weaponized banking. And what weaponized banking is, and when you financialize something like oil, you weaponize it. When you financialize something like mortgages, you weaponize it. What I mean by that is this. You're using it as a fraudulent instrument that's been leveraged 20, 30, 40 times, that it's so far removed from the original asset that any sort of any sort of default down the line can cause a chain reaction to bring down the whole entire thing. Okay? And that's what we're seeing in the oil industry. These are companies who have enjoyed, for the longest time, oil anywhere between $80, $90, $100 a barrel, and they lived comfortably on that. They've hedged bets on that. Their whole existence is based upon that. Now that oil prices are shooting down, okay, and they have touched the low 40s, and what my sources have said, they're going to hit into the high 30s, 39, it'll hit 39 a little bit.
I heard somebody say it might even go down to 20, and there was some good logic behind it that it might actually.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I don't discount that either. And as that happens, you're going to see a cascade effect that's going to ripple through the entire shale oil industry, bringing down companies, Paul. And this is the thing. What's left of the American economy, this is a major peg, okay, that's going to get knocked right out. I let the people envision a three-legged stool, okay? And the three-legged stool is sustained by the Fed buying all the U.S. debt. Okay, the three-legged stool is supposed to be representative of the American economy, so to speak, of what's supporting it. One leg of support is the Fed buying all the debt. The second leg of the support is the fraud, the war, and the military-industrial complex and all that nonsense that's generated on that. Basically, these are projects and bridges to nowhere, so to speak. Even if it's, like for instance, people don't realize, look at the Defense Department. Look at the ridiculous F-35 fighter that they're trying to ram down the throats of Canadians, trying to tell you guys to buy the ridiculous plane. I don't know if you guys have or not, but that's a bridge to nowhere. Oh, they probably will.
Harper's in the pocket of the... Yeah.
You guys are gonna fly. You guys are gonna buy the Flying Lemon.
Right.
So the Flying Lemon is a bridge to nowhere. It's designed expressly to bleed funds. It's designed expressly as a money pit. Okay. So that's the type. So that's another leg of the stool. Is the fraud, the bridges to nowhere, the pork belly projects, just to have some sort of activity so they can measure it as activity. In other words, is being like a busy idiot. It's another term for being busy just for the sake of being busy, but there's nothing productive occurring. Okay. The final leg of it is what's left of manufacturing and what's left of the real economy, and the big part of that is that petroleum industry. So when that peg gets knocked out, Paul, oh my God! What the research and the numbers I've crunched is this: for every petroleum job that the United States loses, it is losing 2.3 supporting jobs as well. And what I mean by that is this: the guy who goes to work on the shale oil projects in North Dakota or Pennsylvania or in Texas or in Louisiana or in Alaska or whatnot, what's happening with him is, he gets up in the morning, he goes to the deli, you have whole entire towns, Paul, that have been built around these oil drilling complexes, little communities, almost like, how it was back in the days when you had miners show up and, whole communities will develop. They call them mining towns. Well, you have drilling towns. And these drilling towns popped up out of nowhere, built around the fact that, hey, you know what, there's oil drilling here, and just like most Americans think that the good times are going to last forever, good times are here again, and oil will perpetually be coming out of the ground. Everything's good. So you have these whole towns, the little microeconomies popped up. So that oil drilling guy who goes to work in the morning, who stops off at the deli or the diner, picks up his morning coffee or his bagel, when he loses his job, the waitress or the store clerk that serves the guy loses her job. The retail associate who sells him his flannel shirts and jeans that he wears and his Wolverine or Timberland boots that he wears to go to work, he loses his job too. So it sends a cascading effect. So every single job that's lost in the petroleum industry, you're looking at about 2.3 jobs per one job that is lost. That's huge. That's huge. We add up the numbers, Paul. Already we have tens of thousands of layoffs already completed, and we're heading for more. In other words, the gist of what I'm saying, folks, is we are right now near the end of this whole entire thing.
We would concur with you. I like your terminology of weaponized banking. And yes, they are weapons of even what's that guy from Nebraska? Warren Buffett. He called it weapons of mass destruction. So mass financial destruction. So I think absolutely you're right. Now I did read today in Zero Hedge that in regards to what you're saying here, that a lot of these shale oil companies, what's happened is that their secured lines of credits are being cut in half, or they're being called in. So their access to funding is being cut off, and that's like cutting a marathon runner's legs. That's exactly what's happening. So yes, I 100% agree with you that this is going to have a massive, and already is having a massive effect. But let's not look at the mainstream numbers that tell us that employment is now 5.5% and everything is rosy. Okay, so oil, this whole thing about the drop in oil prices was going to destroy Russia. It's actually, people that are in the know have concluded that it is definitely going to hurt the U.S. a lot more than it is going to hurt Russia or Saudi Arabia. Is that your view as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's no way they're going to hurt the Russians, okay? What a lot of people forgot to realize, okay, that since December, I love this, Paul. This is what gets me about the media in the United States and in the West in general. Since December, okay, the dollar's lost 30% against the ruble. The euro has lost close to 40% against the ruble. Okay, so where's all the chicken heads running around saying the sky is falling? Where's all the insane sarcastic headlines calling for the death of the dollar? I mean, you just don't see it. There's no reality anymore. It's unbelievable. The dollar lost 30% against the ruble. But then you look at the dollar index; it's almost at 100%.
Right.
It's insane, So it's the march away from reality has increased into hyperspeed right now. It's unbelievable. The U.S. economy is I love these job reports. Yesterday, they released, the BLS released their jobs report yesterday. Surprise, surprise, a massive miss yet again, and even with the government's underreported numbers. Okay, one of the things I've said is we are contracting. This economy is contracting over 3.5%, close to maybe even 4% per year, and it's unbelievable what's happening, Paul. It truly is. And right now, you look at the data. Okay, you look at how things in the market were built up right before the 2008 collapse. We're seeing the same thing happening yet again. except this time it's far worse, because this time everything that was leveraged in 2008 has been quadruple leveraged in 2015. So the question becomes, how much longer can it go? And the answer is not that much longer. And people say, well, you can always say that, V. Well, here's the answer, folks. Here's the answer. Here's something that hasn't happened since last year, that has happened within the last few weeks, and now it's basically the fat lady's about to say. You had China launch their AIIB, okay, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, okay? That's their, counter to the IMF. It's going to be another, what's the word, a counterpart, okay, to the BRICS Bank. It's going to work in unison with the BRICS Bank. It's a counterparty to the IMF. Okay, so the AIIB is launched. They announced it. Okay, Russia announced that they're about ready to launch full time their Double Eagle project, which is basically their SWIFT alternative, and 91 creditors signed up. Then what happens is that China just finished testing their SWIFT alternative called CIPS, China Interbank System Payments. I don't remember the exact acronym at this point, but it's called CIPS, C-I-P-S.
China Interbank Payment System, yeah.
There you go, China Interbank Payment Systems. So China launched that, okay? And they said it'll be ready by September, October. And then they announced, then they have the AIB, and all of a sudden, about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, the BRICS, okay? And folks, I've been saying this since April of 2014. The City of London, my guys in the City of London have told me, they're not going to support any sort of sanctions against Russia. They don't want war with Russia, and that the UK will abandon the US, and the US will be isolated and left to die. And I said, okay, well, be the sign. And they said, you're going to look for a currency swap. Okay, we're going to set up currency swaps. And sure enough, on March 25th of 2014, the Bank of England and the Chinese central bank signed a currency swap. The next thing that they've told me is watch for a major move. Well, here's the major move. About 2 weeks ago, the UK announced they are going full weight in with the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the AIIB. They're going full in. The U.S. freaks out like, what? You didn't consult with us. Why didn't you do that? Why are you leaving? And then a few days after, guess what happens? New Zealand, Australia, Italy, Spain, France, Germany all announced, hey, we're going to the AIIB too. The U.S. is like, what? Are you kidding me? And then last night, I tweeted about this. It was last night or the night before. Japan announced that they're going to join the AIIB. And then within a couple of hours the next morning, they announced, okay, we're not going to do it. They obviously got a phone call from Washington telling them to knock it off. Washington has given Japan the orders to commit hara-kiri on themselves. So they flipped. But folks, what I'm saying is this, okay? Picture this as a dinner table, okay? And picture these nations as people sitting around on a dinner table. They're all eating food. They're sitting down. They're trying to eat, and the food is really bad. I mean, what's being served is rotten. It's toxic. It's disgusting. Who wants to eat this stuff? And everybody's sitting around the table, and they're all trying to be polite. They're all trying to be gentlemen. They don't want to get up and say, hey, man, the food sucks. I got to go. And make a beeline to some fast food joint to pick up a hamburger and some french fries. They don't want to do that at this point. But they're just waiting for one guy to get up and say, you know what, I'm out of here. And then they themselves will make a beeline to the exit. That one guy that got up and left the dinner table and said, you know what, we're done with this, was the BRICS, America's quote-unquote ally. And the rest of America's quote-unquote allies also got up from the dinner table and said, you know what, we're tired of eating at your table. Your food sucks. It's horrible. It's disgusting. What you're serving, we don't want it. Later. And that's what's happening, Paul. So we are near the end of this thing. So the question becomes, how how much longer can this go? Well, I say, and one of the things I predicted from my sources, is that by the end of 2015, you're going to see the complete undermining of the United States dollar as the world reserve currency. I never said dollar collapse, dollar at the end of 2015. No. Undermining is the key word. What does undermining mean? It means it's going to be supplanted, it's going to be used less, it's going to be resisted, it's going to be pushed away. Okay? It's going to be worked against in a covert and in some cases overt manner. Undermined. Okay? We are definitely, with all the geopolitical movements that have occurred, we are poised to see that the end of 2015, the dollar will be undermined. And that is why the AIIB is up. That is why the European quote-unquote allies have signed up with the AIIB. That is why China has launched SIPs. That is why the Russians have launched Double Eagle. That is why all these realignments are occurring, and the United States is being isolated. It's no longer the country of preeminence. It's no longer the light on the hill in any decision and any talk. It is just another person on the end of the table. That's all it is, folks, and we're nearing the end of this thing. End of 2015, you'll see the undermining of the United States dollar. It will continue to ride out, okay? It will ride out, and you might look at the dollar index in 2016 and say, hey, V, it's still, the 90s. It's still a high dollar. It's still a strong dollar. But you'll miss the point of what's happening geopolitically. You cannot look at the lying data that's coming out of D.C., that's coming out of the government sources, and then in Wall Street, which are outright lying to you, and say, hey, everything's hunky-dory. You can't look at that. Because internationally, folks, look, you want to know what's going on in the United States? Look at international news. Look at how other nations perceive us. And that's when you begin to see that, hey, there's a massive change in the tide. There's a massive change in the wind. There's a shift geopolitically away from the United States, and we are nearing the end of this whole thing. By 2017, my sources have told me that, especially one major source, has said the United States will cease to exist as we currently know it. And that possibility, folks, is very, very, very high. Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody can give you the exact timing. But from the data that we can get, we can make estimates. And this is an estimate that by 2017, it's going to be a whole different ballgame.
I would again agree with you, V. I recently did a couple of programs titled De-Dollarization in Critical Phase. And this, what you're talking about, I think by the end of 2015, what we will witness is a great deal more acceleration. But this process has been ongoing for some years now. And it was about a year ago, just about 14, 15 months ago, that we started hearing this term de-dollarization. And everything that you have just listed is confirmation that de-dollarization is not something which is a future event. It is ongoing at a very rapid speed, and it is like an avalanche coming down the hill. It's gathering speed all the time. And that time frame of 2016-17, I would concur with you that it is going to radically change the face of the global financial system and the role of the U.S. dollar in it, and also the petrodollar. I think the petrodollar is also definitely Saudi Arabia. I think it's only a matter of time when they, say bye-bye to the petrodollar, and that'll be the end of basically the petrodollar as the end of the U.S. dollar is also now, fast approaching. So,
absolutely.
So what do you think will, since we're on the subject, let's talk about some of the radical changes that you can expect, though, then, because right now everybody's living in the U.S. like it's, or in Canada here too, like it's the roaring 20s, But I guess the 30s are straight ahead, aren't they?
Say that again?
I said everybody's living right now like it's the roaring 20s, but the 1930s are now staring us in the face, are they not?
The funny thing is they're living like it's the roaring 20s while they're actually in the 1930s depression.
Yeah, right. You're right. That is funny in a way, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe, and I'm convinced of this. Look, guys, folks, I'm a very, very logical individual. I look at data, I look at numbers all the time. I look at trends. I look at a lot of things. You know that there's something fundamentally wrong when I can sit and guys like Paul and many of the educated audience that listen to this program, and I'm sure a lot of you are listening and had this conversation with your family members, your friends, and these could be very educated people holding high-level degrees, and you sit across the table from that individual and you lay out not ideas, not hypotheses, not opinion, not conjecture, not suppositions, none of that. You sit across the table and you give them raw, unadulterated facts. Okay, facts. Inarguable, unequivocal, raw facts. Okay? And folks, people are entitled to their own opinion, but nobody is entitled to your own fact. You're entitled to your own opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. And when you're sitting across the table with your friends and family members, and you begin to discourse in detailing of what's happening geopolitically and economically, and how the dollar is going to die, how the U.S. economy is going to go over the cliff, and they look at you square in the eye and with the impression that you're just making the whole thing up. And folks, that's the condition that absolutely befuddles me. That's the condition where I believe, okay, that somehow the critical thinking aspect in the West, especially in America, okay, most people have been socially, chemically, or I would like to even say spiritually lobotomized. Because when there's this much of a disconnect, okay, where there's no survival instinct, no sense of imminent danger, no sense of there's a change in the wind, and as animals in the wild would sense a change in the wind or sense a change in the electromagnetic field, and they'll head for higher ground because they know there's an earthquake, they know there's a tsunami, there's some sort of a disaster coming. That is an ingrained instinct, okay? Somehow it's been bred, suppressed, or taken out of us humans, especially those of us living in the West. We believe the lies. Not only do we believe the lies, the Bible says in the last days there's going to be people that not only love to, that there's going to be two types of people: those that make a lie, okay, and those who love a lie. And I think that's what we have here, Paul. It's a spiritual condition. I have no other way to describe it, but this is a spiritual condition. I mean, it's unbelievable. I can give 900 years of raw economic data at my fingertips, sitting on my bookshelf right behind me, and I can sit in front of a person and detail for them how screwed they are, how screwed the economy is, and their eyes will just glaze over, and they'll just look at me and be like, well, it's just your opinion, and this is just a cycle, and things will just turn around. Like, America always bounces back, and everything will be hunky-dory. And they don't realize this time it's not a cycle. There's nothing cyclical that's occurring within the West, folks. This is systemic. This is a systemic problem. And you cannot fix it at this point. You have to overhaul the system. And the majority of the public is so inured. They're so captivated by the false reality that they're living in. Again, like we said, they're living the Roaring '20s. Okay, they're acting like it's the Roaring '20s, but they're living in the 1930s Depression, and they can't see that 52% of the country is not productive. That 52% of the countrymen are living in near poverty with no job, no hope. But yet it's party time. Everything's good because you know what? Next week, the Kardashians are going to be on a reality show. The new episodes are getting picked up, and Dancing with the Stars has been renewed. And if we hang in there by September, it's going to be another football season that's going to start. So everything's fine. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I have no idea at this point. It's literally being in the Titanic. The Titanic, the hull has been ripped. Water is pouring and the ship is going down, and everybody is fighting over who can get upgraded to first class.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Now, to be fair, I think this illusion has been really strengthened by the policies coming out of Washington and other places, even in Europe and here in Canada as well, where I was just reading the other day that now a lot of these homes that people have not paid mortgages on for like 5-6 years, they may just get to keep them. So there are no foreclosures. Now, I also read that they have changed the FICO score guidelines so that more and more subprime buyers can go and buy trucks and automobiles and drive these big Ford F-150 trucks, gas guzzlers, and so that illusion that everything is hunky-dory is being strengthened by this drug of free money. I mean, there's no other way to put it, but where the heck does it all end?
It's I mean, I liken it to I mean, my God, it's how do you it's like keeping a corpse alive.
That's exactly what it is.
That's all it is. The brain has stopped functioning a long time ago. Okay, the brain is completely brain dead. I mean, there are some vitals. So you throw the corpse on the respirator, you get the lungs working, you get the heart pumping, you get some circulation going, and we see these artificially supported life or artificially supported economic vital signs. And we interpret this artificially supported vital signs as economic activity. But they don't realize, Paul, that the ventilator called the Federal Reserve, once the plug is pulled on that and that no longer works, then the decay begins to set in. And that's the whole thing that people don't understand here. This is artificial. Okay, picture this, folks. It's basically a dead body. It's brain dead. It's being kept alive on a ventilator. It's pumping keeping breathing and respiration and circulation and cardiac activity going, okay? But there's no power in the hospital, okay? The hospital is on a backup generator. And the backup generator is about running out of fuel. So at any moment, okay, the very mechanism that keeps that ventilator pumping, the very power source is about to run out. And once that power source can no longer manipulate these false vital signs, then it's over. You can have a dead body. You can stand over a dead body, and somebody who's completely clinically brain dead, and say, oh, he has a pulse. Oh, he's got a heartbeat. Oh, he's breathing. His chest is moving up and down. He's alive. And you could take it, you could dress it up, you could put him in an Armani suit, throw a nice little Rolex watch on him and say, hey, look, he's alive, he's in perfect condition. But no matter how you dress it up, the patient's pretty much dead. And that's what these guys are trying to do. Oh, subprime, subprime. And what are they doing? They're taking these retarded loans out, giving it to people who can't clearly afford it, and then they're collateralizing it on the back end. Because everything's okay. I mean, we'll if they default on the car loan, we'll just go ahead and repo the car. Okay? And then what? You're repoing an asset. I don't even know why people would see cars as an asset. It's not. I'm a car guy. I have classic cars. I own a classic car that's considered a future classic car, something that will appreciate in value. But the 99.99% of these cars you buy are worthless. They drop 80% of their value, especially these high-end luxury cars, drop 80% of their value in the first 2 years. So you have this outstanding loan for an automobile. Average price of a car is $35,000. Guy drives around for a year or so, loses his job, can't afford it, they come repo it. Now that $35,000 loan is supported by an asset that's worth $10,000 to $12,000. What happens to the balance? No one thinks about that. What happens to the balance between $12,000 and $35,000? Well, who makes up that? That gets thrown back into the. It's a vicious cycle, man. It's unbelievable. You have a house, you're foreclosed on, you live in there for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Well, chances are you don't have to ever pay your mortgage. Well, what happens to all the loans? All of this is creating such a back pressure in money velocity. It's creating such a back pressure in a lot of the feedback loops. This thing is going to blow. It's going to blow bad, Paul.
You know, this is something which may be oblivious to the people, like I said, that are that are hypnotized by American Idol or by NFL Sunday Football, etc. But this vital information is not lost on America's creditors, which is why what we discussed earlier about China and other BRICS countries and the whole world actually is seeking an alternative to the US dollar. So is there not a direct correlation between the rejection of the dollar and the Zimbabwe's, you could call the Zimbabwe USA, which will lead to hyperinflation as the dollar is rejected? Then this party cannot continue anymore, and I think America's hand is going to be forced by its creditors. That's how I see it.
Absolutely. Look at one of the things that I talked about before, even on my website, roguemoney.net. I mean, just this year, Russia's already dumped 50% of their dollar holdings, and they're dumping it as we speak. The Chinese are doing the same thing. Well, what are they doing? Well, the Chinese are using dollars to pave the way for the new Silk Road. The Russians are doing the same thing. Okay, so they are using these worthless paper instruments and putting them to work in order to buy up hard assets, in order to buy favors, in order to buy leverage. Okay, while that worthless, paper instrument still has some sort of a value and some sort of modicum of respect. So they're busy doing this, and many nations are dumping. I firmly believe that the bond dumping that's going on globally is being severely underreported. Number one, and number two, between Euroclear, Clearstream, and the DTCC, they're running out of hiding holes. They're running out of little holes that they can, little black holes they can dump excess U.S. treasuries into.
Belgium?
I mean, yeah, Euroclear in Belgium, exactly. That Euroclear right now holds a little over $5 trillion. $5 trillion already. Okay? I'm sorry, wait, that was, they hold about $2.5 trillion, and there's another, 1 point something trillion in Clearstream. So together, between Clearstream and Euroclear, it's about 5.2 trillion, from my estimates. And then the DTCC, forget it. DTCC is, 40, 50 trillion. I mean, it's an astronomical number. I can't even fathom it. Because they're churning. The DTCC, folks, from numbers that have been done by some top investigators, the DTCC is churning $9 trillion a day. $9 trillion a day in U.S. Treasuries, mortgage-backed securities, stocks. I mean, you name it, man. So it's incredible what's happening. They can't keep the charade going.
It looks like it almost sounds like a parallel universe,
It really is. I mean, Paul, right now the financial world is so detached from reality. It is so detached from reality. I challenge any of the listeners, walk into an Edward Jones, walk into a Morgan Stanley, or, any one of these financial houses, and talk. And talk to any one of those brokers. And they'll say it's a great time to invest in the stock market, and it's a great time to be in the dollar. Folks, the key word, and one of the things I want to say is this: it's not an investable market. What it is, it's a tradable market. And if you're a sharp trader, you got some aggressive stocks, you can go ahead, you can make some money in the short term while the market's heading up higher and higher and higher. We could probably see a 20, even like my buddy Michael Rosecliffe would say, a 30,000 point Dow is a possibility at this point. It's a great way to hide the inflation. You could do that, or you talk to these guys. They'll say it's wonderful, it's tradable, but it is. It's a tradable market, but it's not something you want to invest in for the long term. You don't want to take your retirement nest egg and drop it in Wall Street and trust that I own stocks. You don't own nothing. Okay, because you're a beneficiary owner by contractual obligation, and your ownership rights to a stock can be revoked at any time and or changed without your consent. That is a contractual obligation because every single stock, as soon as an IPO is done, is held by the DTCC in 55 Water Street in Manhattan. That's just a fact. Okay, so that's the deal, folks. I mean, it's a tradable market. It's not investable in the long run. And I recommend people, want to invest, you want to put your nest egg, put it out somewhere, offshore the wealth. There's options there. If you need help on offshoring, I mean, there's teams I work with that all they do is offshore people and get their assets all set up. Those are the things that people need to be concerned about, Paul.
You're absolutely right, V. So what do you say about the possibility of very high inflation or hyperinflation?
Oh my God, we are. My God, I mean, we are literally getting closer and closer to hyperinflation. That's why it blows my mind when I hear certain guys, and you and I know, some of these guys like Dent and Rickard talking about deflation. I mean, what are you guys talking about? I mean, the world is so primed for inflation. Okay, deflation, folks, is the best thing that could happen to the Western public because deflation brings things into balance. Our savings goes up. Okay, the value of what we put away goes up. It works for us, the Joe public, the public at large. Hyperinflation and deflation is like kryptonite to bankers. They hate deflation. Hyperinflation, they love, because as things hyperinflate, the cost of borrowing goes down, the cost of paying off debt goes down, and it works out wonderful for the bankers. They can extract as much money as possible in a hyperinflationary, setup. So, what do you think the powers who are on the levers of control? Do you think that they're steering us towards deflation or hyperinflation? Well, every move that a central bank has orchestrated within the Western world, within the last, 70 years or so, has all been hyperinflationary. Okay? Monetary debasement is official policy at every central bank right now. So where do people think it's going to be deflationary? We're heading for a massive hyperinflation. When all the tricks, when all the charade, when the acts, and all these things begin to run out, when they start running out of tricks on how to manipulate the numbers, and the reality starts setting in that the rest of the world do not want the dollar, and they begin dumping in mass, and they can't hide this fact anymore, which is soon approaching, you will see the rapidity, the speed, and the ferocity of hyperinflation set into the United States at a pace never, ever, ever seen before in human history. It's going to be so rapid. It's going to be much more rapid than what happened in Argentina. It's going to be much more rapid than the Weimar Republic. It's going to be much more rapid and ferocious than even what's happening in Zimbabwe, because there's so much dollars out there. Zimbabwe is not a reserve currency. The Argentinian currency is not a reserve currency. The dollar is a world reserve currency. And because there's so many dollars floating around in the system, clogging the system, polluting the system, taking up space in the system, being a glut in the system, that purge is going to be a tidal wave, 1,000 feet tall, that's going to crash into the U.S. markets and wipe out the savings, wipe out the purchasing power, and wipe out the wealth of America instantaneously. That's where we're heading. And the bankers, count my word, the banksters on the top of that will ride like a bunch of surfers. They will ride that wave right into the American shores, and they will profit from this collapse. Guaranteed, Paul.
I love that quote, how did you go bankrupt? First slowly and then suddenly. And yes, so we are now approaching that suddenly phase. And when it hits, you're right, it will be like a tsunami. And like when the current when the tide goes out, everybody thinks, oh wow, it's going to be this is kind of cool. But then when it comes back in, the ferocity and the speed is just mind-boggling. So that's, I think, is definitely going to come. And this conclusion that high inflation, hyperinflation is in the cards, I think is also evidenced by currency wars that are going on out there. See, in 2007, 8, 9, I think the central banks had a very, very coordinated face. Okay, they were all walking lockstep. But I believe, especially since the beginning of this year, with the Swiss bank, for example, removing its peg to the euro, and every central bank, there being Zero Hedge keeps track of it. There have been like some 30 or 40 now that are dropping interest rates and doing all kinds of things to try and protect their own currency. So would you say that we are in the midst of currency wars right now?
Oh my God, we're moving away from currency. Usually goes from currency wars, trade wars, and then hot wars. We're gone from currency wars, or we're going directly into a hot war. How big is it? I don't think it's going to be World War III type levels. But one of the things that concerns me is the absolute lunacy, the craziness that is within the United States power structure. That as the wounded animal senses its imminent death, will it lash out one last time? Will it lash out one last time and try to attack, one last time before it dies, in order to somehow, maybe it thinks that it can stay viable and live through its injuries? And that's something that people have to see. The United States is an injured animal. It's bleeding out. It's dying. It's going to die. The problem is that the animal doesn't think that it is. And it feels that those that are attacking it, its weak economic underbelly, this animal feels that it has a chance that if it were to lash out and attack its assailants, that somehow this animal could live and survive. But it can never recover from its wounds, Paul, because those wounds are mortal wounds. They are mortal in danger. They are death blows. It's dying. And so my concern is that these idiots in D.C., in their pride, in their hubris, will try to start, and they're already trying to start a war with Russia. They're trying it. That my fear is that Russia will respond and lay a beating on these guys, the likes of which the world has never seen. And there might be a chance that it can spill into a larger regional war. I'm not calling for World War III, but I can see some sort of war spilling out in Eastern Europe, even in the Middle East. And it's not going to be,
Speaking of the Middle East, like this. There's always been a threat of war there, but now I see all this activity that is just rapidly increasing with now with this thing with Yemen and Saudi Arabia, for example. Obviously Saudi Arabia is acting as a proxy, so whose proxy could it be but the U.S.? So I don't even know what this agenda is in Yemen and all that that's going on. But you're right, these wars are definitely expanding and widening.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, the thing was, folks, right now things are so convoluted in the Middle East. You have proxy wars within proxy wars within proxy wars. Okay? Your listeners, and I've come on your show and I said this, there is a proxy war that's been going on for decades between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And I'm the only one that reported that, sometime in late May of 2014, the Saudis, I think they met in May, July, and November, and they finished up their meetings in December at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. But they've had meetings, Saudi intelligence and Iranian intelligence, as well as all the terrorist groups that each of them support, the Sunni terrorist groups, like Al Nursa, all the other, I forget what their names are, and then the Shiite groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, they have all, met together, and they've come to an agreement that the ISIS is not Islamic, and that they're going to end the reign of ISIS in the Middle East. And as soon as they've mentioned that, and then they talked about it, you've seen these agreements come out, and then we start talking about a shift of Saudi Arabia going from the west to the east. Okay, and they have to do that. Then we have the Saudi king who died, which I detailed all this in a report on Rogue Money months and months ago called Kingdoms of Blood and Sand. If anybody wants to go onto the site and reread that article, it's incredibly detailed. And when the Saudi king died, King Fahd actually died 2 weeks before the January 23rd date. But they made it January 23rd for the specific occult and hidden reasons. And then Salman took over. Salman is 79, 80 years old, very unhealthy individual. He is, for the most part, has been a U.S. proxy. The second in line to succeed Salman is Merkin. Merkin is a bastard child. He has really no favor with the royals. He served he's a British proxy. The problem is that the kingdom understands that it cannot stay within the confines of U.S. hegemony. It cannot stay there. If it were to, it will die. So with the low oil prices, they are wiping out their U.S. competitors. Okay? They're wiping out their U.S. competitors. Now, what's happening in Yemen is pretty interesting. Yemen, since first of all, look at the attacks that happened before Yemen. Okay? You had on the 33rd parallel, and then again, there's a reason for that. So 33rd parallel, you had that false flag attack in Tunisia. Like I said, March, 17th to the 21st, there's going to be a false flag attack in the Middle East or even in North Africa. Sure enough, it happened. Okay, because I got good quality intel. So that attack happened on the 33rd parallel, and then you have the Yemen thing happen, okay, where they attacked the mosque, killed about 100 some odd people. And then this whole entire campaign was launched in Yemen to fight the Houthi rebels, which are Shiites. There's a huge Shiite population in Yemen, and they not only are in Yemen, the Shiite population in the Arabian Peninsula is massive. It goes all the way from Yemen, runs all the way up to Bahrain, and takes up the part of southern Saudi Arabia. There's a huge Shiite population there. Again, Saudi Arabia has always had a problem with them, and that Shiite population has always been in the back pocket of the Iranians. In fact, the Iranian cleric in southern Saudi Arabia, who's just been put on his death sentence, is an Iranian operative. He's an Iranian intelligence asset. The al-Houthi rebels, which is named after Hussein al-Houthi, or Hassan al-Houthi, the guy who started, was a college student, he was an Iranian proxy. His job was basically, protesting the 2003 American invasion of Iraq. Okay? So you have these things come up. So what's happening is ISIS and then Saudi Arabia and all these other countries attacking the al-Houthi rebels, trying to, quell any sort of Iranian influence. Again, the proxy war, that's what it seems on the surface. But underneath the surface, one level above the surface, one level above it, I think there is an agreement with the Iranians that said, okay, fine, you want to go ahead and for the sake of making it look good in front of the U.S., because, again, you're trying to, get away from the United States, you want to go ahead and attack the al-Houthi rebels, go ahead and attack them. We'll just disavow any sort of material or financial support to these guys. And Iran came forward and said, we're not supporting these guys. Okay? Now, no matter what they do in terms of the al-Houthi rebels and bombing them and whatnot, I think it's for show. And if there is a ground invasion by Saudi Arabia, they're not going to, it's not going to be that much of a big deal. And again, Egypt wants it as well because the link of the al-Houthi rebels is also linked to the Muslim Brotherhood. There's a link there, okay? So that's why Egypt wants in. That's why al-Sisi all of a sudden says, you know what, they want to go there because there's a strong tie between the al-Houthi and the Muslim Brotherhood that Egypt wants to crush. So Egypt is looking to get into that theater as well. So all this is happening. You might say to yourself, "Ooh, it looks like the Americans are making the Saudis do their bidding." Not so fast. Not so fast. Let's take a broader view. Let's think bigger. Who is the main power in Yemen? People will say it must be the U.S. Must be no. The main power since 1958 in Yemen is China.
Oh, really?
Yep. China has used Yemen, its investments. I mean, there's a great article on Rogue Money. It's called, in fact, the article is called It's Not You, It's Me. Okay, that's the title of the article, where I detail the importance of Yemen. Okay? And the Yemen was, I detailed it right after that Shiite mosque was blown up. And what people don't realize is that Yemen is a key choke point in the Red Sea. Okay? It's a very key choke point in the Red Sea. And thus, it also is a place where you can move rapidly into the Suez Canal. Okay? I'm sorry, the Strait of Hormuz. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
As well as the Suez Canal. And its proximity to the Suez Canal and the Strait of Hormuz makes it a perfect platform for power projection. And that nation, China, has a long history of having its influence over Yemen, because even though Yemen, Paul, is not a major oil exporter, but China utilizes Yemen's oil reserves to help fuel its massive energy needs. For every little bit that China, for China, every little bit helps, right? So Yemen is vital to China, not only for its oil, but it's also China's springboard for its entire Middle East strategy, and it has been the springboard for China's Middle Eastern strategy since the 1950s. Now watch this now, okay? What other country has been important to the Chinese since the 1950s and for the Chinese springboard for power projection into North Africa? Tunisia. And what does Tunisia and Yemen have in common, right?
Both had terror attacks recently.
Terror attacks, exactly. Right? Terror attacks. And the most amazing thing is, Paul,
So saying we here, sorry to interrupt 1 second here, like now you're putting some pieces together that all these countries that have, support and, perhaps relationships with China, with Russia, and other players, they get attacked, such as Syria, for example, which has had close ties with Russia for a long time. Libya was, big time with China. Like China had a lot of investment in Libya, and Libya got destroyed. And now you're talking about Yemen and Tunisia, and these countries also having close ties and relationships with China, for example, and now they are under threat. And same thing with Western Africa, where China was doing a lot of investment, and even in Nigeria and all those, they had Ebola outbreaks there. So, right? So it doesn't seem to happen in countries that are allied with the U.S. NATO. It just seems to happen with these countries that are allied with the Eastern Bloc. So that is more than a coincidence, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. And then when you look at the actual numbers, look at the Tunisia attack. It was on the 33rd parallel. Look at the Yemen attack. It was on the 15th parallel. The 15 and 33 are very powerful numbers in the occult. Now, I bring this up not as somebody who's just an economist or sounding all type of, not trying to sound like some sort of an esoteric expert here. But the point that I want to get across to people, and I said this multiple times, whether you believe it or not is irrelevant. This is what the power brokers, believe. These numbers and these rituals and all these things are important to them. So when they're doing attacks on the 33rd parallel, 15th parallel, and you're seeing events happening at that, this is code. The number 15 and the number 17 are numbers that we've seen in the Silver Code back in May, when yours truly and May of 2014, when yours truly and my intelligence cohort W, when we broke the story before it even happened, the silver probably going to be closing in London, but the actual CME is going to be buying out the silver price fix and moving it to Chicago when nobody even knew about it until July. Again, those are the same codes, 15, 17. These are the same codes we're seeing all the time, flashing. And for me seeing it in Yemen and then again in Tunisia, these are coded messages. These are messages that are being sent out there, folks. Do not take this lightly. Okay, look, I'm not your typical, I'm here just to discuss markets and this, that, and the other. No. This is a big game. This is a massive chessboard, and there's a great game being played here. And you have to understand the players. You got to think bigger. Okay, you got to think bigger. That's the whole point here, Paul. Right.
So now this, while we are on this topic here, what's been happening with these Iran talks, which have really surprised a lot of people for years and years and years. Iran's the bad guy, nuclear threat, all that. And now suddenly they're having these nuclear talk deals with Iran. Is that an indication that Saudi Arabia is being abandoned and Iran is being embraced as the, let's say, the power broker of the Middle East?
Yeah, absolutely. The Iranians have nukes. That's really no secret. They've had it for a while. Okay, the Saudis have nukes. They've procured that from Pakistan. The exact amount I don't know. Israel has over 400 nukes. Okay, Israel is the Rothschild European banking colonization project that failed because the natives decided to fight back. Okay, that's all what Israel is. Now, in terms of Iran, it's pretty interesting. Iran, folks, have more oil than Saudi Arabia. That's a fact. The difference is what made Saudi Arabia such an attractive operation for a lot of the Western oil companies and the Saudi Aramco oil companies, things that sort of what made them successful, is that Saudi Arabia is able to get oil out of the ground cheaper than anybody else because it's easy. Okay, Iran has a much more difficult time to get their oil out, and the type of oil they get out from where they are needs more refinement. So they don't have the refinery capacity because they need the infrastructure more than anything. They need the power to refine oil, and that power is not going to be something that's supported by the electrical grid. So this is what the talks about nuclear power plants come into play. That you can have secret nuclear plants that create nuclear bombs outside for fissile nuclear material, but when it comes to civilian operations, that needs to be above ground. And when it's above ground, it's put in the eyesight of everybody who can see it. Okay, so then it becomes a problem. So Iran. And I'll tell everybody the backstory of this. Iran, decades ago, have said, hey, you know what? We were sitting on all this oil. We need refinery capacity. We're going to build some new plants. And then the U.S., because of Israel's behest, they know that if Iran ever prospers as an oil exporting country, the loss of power by the West in the Middle East will be severe, and the petrodollar will be threatened. Okay, so the West, because of U.S. coercion, said no. And the U.S. and the Western attack dog in the Middle East called Israel, was making sure that never happens. So Iran says, okay, fine, you're not going to let us build nuclear plants. This is what we'll do. We will give you our oil. You guys refine it for us and send it back to us. We'll pay for it. Sounds like a fair deal, right? Sounds like a win-win situation, right?
Right.
No, was the answer. So Iran says, wait a minute, you're not allowing us to build nuclear plants that we can benefit our own nation and benefit our own people and refine our own petroleum. You're not allowing us to do that. number one. And then number two, when we offer to give you our oil so you guys can refine it for us and give it back to us, you said no. Then what is the option? What are we supposed to do? And the answer from the United States is eat your oil and die. That's it. Eat your oil and die. That was the American answer. Okay? Iran's like, this is ridiculous. In steps China and Russia, especially in steps Russia and Total Petroleum. Remember Total Petroleum, Paul?
I do, yes.
I'm the guy who broke this. I'm the guy who talked about Christophe de Margerie months before the Johnny-come-latelys even talked about him and said that this guy's a major target. And when Christophe de Margerie was assassinated, I'm the guy who shot multiple emails off to multiple talking heads who then later came on, various shows and said, oh, yeah, Christophe de Margerie was assassinated. They got that from me. Okay? I'm the source of that. So when Christophe de Margerie was killed by a snowplow in the second busiest private airport in all of Europe, in the Russian equivalent of Beverly Hills, okay, what people failed to realize was that Total Petroleum, for the longest time, has been involved in building and Iranian refinery and giving them the technology and the material know-how on how to do it. It was called the South Pars Project, and it was done for a very long time, and it existed through various legal loopholes until the U.S. brought enough pressure upon France that they had to shut it down. Okay? So officially on paper, Total stopped in 2006. But they still continue through financing and through sharing of technology, but this time they did it through their Russian proxies, and the Russians were also involved and working with the French, Total Petroleum, in order to help build refining capacity and sharing technology and the engineering know-how with the Iranians. Okay? And the bank, and again, I'm the guy who detailed this, and the bank that was involved in that whole entire deal that helped funnel and launder some of that money, so to speak.
Was it BNP Paribas?
Bingo! BNP. And they get fined.
Yeah.
And they get fined. So this is the game that's being played. So now the U.S. is realizing it's losing the Middle East. So I believe in somewhere within the U.S. hierarchy, they know the Saudis are going to flip. They know it. So now you see the U.S. playing this duplicitous role of, hey, come on, Iran, we'll help you. We'll help build up your infrastructure. But Iran knows that the U.S., is like Dracula. It's like, doing business with the U.S. is there's always strings attached. Okay?
It's like a leech.
So it's a leech. So if the U.S. says, I'm going to help you with your oil refinery, the real question would be, okay, what do you want besides just the fees and the money you're going to make from helping with the refining process? What do you really want? And it usually has to do with setting up NGOs within the country and fomenting revolution. Okay? And let me tell something about to a lot of the audience that's listening now. Iran is not a crazy, out-of-control Islamic state. It really isn't. Okay, for the most part, it's secular. The women go to college. Women can walk around without burqas. Women can walk around without head coverings. Okay, it's very educated. They're a first-class civilization, and they can go into the next level if they have the refining capability for their oil, and they know that. Okay, they're not some backward, people that want to blow Israel off the face of the map. Ahmadinejad never even said that. It is a bloody lie. Okay. I love how these idiots and these programmers in the West paint every single Muslim as some sort of a bloodthirsty maniac who wants to kill himself for the glory of Allah. It really isn't the case, folks. The vast majority of them just want to be left alone. They want to be able to send their kids to school and live prosperous lives. The majority of them. You got these, religious nuts who screw up everything and for everybody else. But that's a side note. Anyway, Iran has no desire to commit suicide. Okay, in other words, they're not. The way these guys mark. I mean, look, folks, the people that are telling you, like that idiot chicken hawk Benjamin Netanyahu. That's what I call him. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister-elect of Israel, who somehow got reelected again in a landslide, quote-unquote, and I'm sure Diebold was involved in that vote.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So Netanyahu says, Iran is crossing that red line, and they're going to go nuclear. And their only desire to get nukes is so they can immediately attack Israel and give it to a terrorist organization. What the heck are you talking about? I mean, what the heck are you talking about, Netanyahu? You're the guys who created Hamas. You're the guys who supported the Muslim Brotherhood. You're the guys who helped create, fund, and direct al-Nusra. You're the ones who are providing men, materiel, training, and logistics to ISIS. So let's not talk about Iran sending over some terrorist groups so they can bomb Israel. Iran knows that any sort of a nuclear event in the Middle East, in Israel, quote-unquote, is going to be blamed on them. They don't want to get annihilated. They'd rather make money. They'd rather be successful. They'd rather make money. And you know what? There are still some people who have sense in the welfare state out in the Mediterranean called Israel that says, hey, you know what? Sucking off the teat of the United States to the tune of $4.5 billion a year is really not a good economic policy. And pissing off the entire neighborhood that we're living in and acting like a bunch of spoiled brats is not a good strategy. Maybe we should do something, and that's why they built the Tamar platform out in the Mediterranean, because they have there's oil and gas reserves there. That's technically owned by the Palestinians, but that's why they're running their own little thing over there. But anyway, there are those that want business; they want to make money. The crazy thing is, this is a sad thing. I'm starting to realize this, Paul. The faster the U.S. ends, the faster that this monstrosity that has become the United States ends, the faster there'll actually be, and some real stabilizing forces like China and Russia enter into the Middle East, faster there'll be peace in the Middle East. Because at that point, it's not going to be about war and the idiotic gunboat diplomacy that's been copied by the United States, and this crazy fomenting of terrorism, which is created by the West. There'll be economic prosperity, and the majority of the Middle East will be chasing prosperity. They'll be more interested in making money than making war. And if you poll every single person on planet Earth, 99.999% of them, except for the mentally deranged, want to live a good life.
Well, yes, they do. Yes, Toronto has a very big Persian population. And even when I was growing up in India back in the 70s, we used to get a lot of Iranian kids that came to go to college in India.
Yeah.
And you know what? Iran, you're right, was a very, always been, they were more modern and advanced than Saudi Arabia, for example.
Oh, big time. Oh.
Right. So these things, this idea that, it's all being run by mullahs and everybody's all, fanatics and all that is absolutely not true. Anyhow, I just, as an point of interest, I recently saw this movie with Sean Connery. It's called The Next Man, or it's also subtitled The Arab Conspiracy. It was actually a very interesting movie about, all these political maneuvers and what happens when an Arab country wants to set up their own, petrochemicals industry, and who it is that will work very actively to discourage that, quote unquote. So, it's on YouTube if, listeners want to go watch it. It's called The Arab Conspiracy. Highly recommended. Before we go, is there any other information that we might have missed that you want to share? And also, please tell listeners about your website and your contact information and what services that you offer that they can avail of.
Sure. Anything else?
Okay, let's talk about before we go,
sure.
One subject, of course, which we should discuss is gold and silver. okay, before we finish off. If you got a few more minutes, then we can just talk about that a little bit. All these things that are happening, I see them as very positive for, a lot of people like us who have, promoted gold and silver and believe that that is going to be the only real form of money left at some point in the future. So all these events that have happened in 2015, do they bode well for precious metals?
Yes, absolutely. Because you know what, the manipulation is going to come to an end. This is what I tell people. It's people will cite themselves out. They're like, oh my God, I bought gold for $1,500. Now it's $11.96. What do I do? You hold on to it, man. You don't look at how much gold has lost against the dollar. Why don't you talk about how much the dollar has lost against gold? And the answer is 98%. Okay, gold was still the best performing asset in January and in February. Surprise, surprise. Okay? So hold on to your precious metals. If you want to diversify, I also recommend strategic metals. There's a team that I work with out in Switzerland. They started a fund that basically was a strategic metals fund because they got sick of all the manipulation that was going on in the gold and silver market. And now they've launched a strategic metals fund, and it's available for any Canadian or American listener, anybody in the world. You want to get strategic metals, you want to get into a basket of strategic metals. Go to my website, roguemoney.net, click the services tab, click on strategic metals, fill in your contact information. One of the guys from the team will get a hold of you and set you up, give you all the information that you need. Right now, the reason why I mentioned that is because right now it's a smash and grab for hard assets. Okay, the more hard assets you have, the better off you will be. So not only do I have gold and silver, but I also have I hold baskets of strategic metals like rhenium, Paul. Rhenium is used in jet engines. Only 50 tons of rhenium is mined every year. That's it, 50 tons. Okay, it's used in jet engines. There's no substitute for it. Okay, and rhenium is right now anywhere between $4,600 and $5,000 a kilo. Okay, so I hold a couple of shares of that. There's gallium. There's indium. Indium, and your cell phone screen can't even turn on. Your LCD computer screen can't even work without indium. It's used in LEDs. It's used in as a light source. These are strategic. And as the world unravels and goes into chaos, as we ditch and deleverage ourselves from the shackles of the dollar system, these strategic metals, along with precious metals, will skyrocket in value. Get out of paper, get into a tangible. Get out of the dollar, get into a tangible. Okay? If you're in the United States and you have the means, offshore your wealth. Offshore your wealth. If you're not offshoring, you don't have an international corporation set up or an asset protected trust set up offshore in order to protect your wealth, your finance, your gold, your silver, land, anything that you own, you're a dead man walking. You're a dead man walking. And that's the thing here, folks. It's right now. I recommend anybody do not pay attention to the ridiculous spot price. The spot price, Paul, is as real as an 18,000 point Dow. Okay.
Right.
The spot price is as real as a 100 on the dollar index. Okay. It has no bearing on reality whatsoever.
And that I think that it will come true that once this rejection of the dollar accelerates, there is also going to come a point when it is going to be openly acknowledged and admitted that gold indeed is money, and by default, by extension, silver as well. And the value of these metals is, let's say, in dollar terms and paper currency terms, is going to rise dramatically. And I think those days are now closer than they are further. One more subject which I want to just touch base on with you, if you have any information on it, V, is something which is just of interest to me, is this Germanwings airplane crash in France. Have you heard? It's very suspicious to me. I did a couple of programs on it, giving my opinion, my speculation that this was an intelligence op. and nothing to do with this co-pilot, who's being blamed for it. Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, it's definitely an intelligence op. What it is, the guy was definitely, some sources saying that he was drugged, but there's a lot of numerology attached to that German Wings flight. And in fact, there's a Canadian broadcaster whom I love listening to because he was actually, I was turned on to him by my buddy W. He's on AM 640 in Toronto. It's Gary Bell, A View from Space. And he's on Saturday nights from, I think, 10 to 2 p.m., 10 to 2 a.m. And he detailed it. There's a lot of numerology behind the German Wings flight that you just can't say, it's just an accident, really. There's just way too much things behind it. And I don't buy it for once that it was some sort of a psychotic guy who, decided to crash a plane to the side of a mountain.
And also, I was thinking that this airspace, which is between France, Spain, and Germany, flying over France, this has to be some of the most heavily defended airspace in the world, okay? Yeah. So if there's even a slightest indication that a plane has been hijacked or something is out of the ordinary, I think that these planes have remote control capabilities which will override the pilot in a heartbeat. So unless somebody wanted it to crash, because there was no mechanical failure, unless somebody wanted it to crash, it would not have been done the way, they're telling us it happened.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing. I firmly believe that. I don't believe it's just here's the thing. All these events that are occurring, folks, these plane crashes that have occurred in the last year or so, these false flags that are occurring, all these of distress of nations building up to the summer solstice. Okay. And I've said this in your program so many times, Paul, and I said, from November 17th all the way to June 21st is going to be a time, June 21st, 2015, is going to be a time of massive volatility and some incredible world events. There's going to be a lot of bloodshed. Okay, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be happening, and folks, we're on that course because June 21st is a very, 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 very important date for them. Okay, and I guess I'll go into the details of that at a later program. I don't think I'm prepared right now to even talk about it, that type of level material at the moment. But
once you put all the numbers together, let's say pieces together, then maybe we can do a little segment of that in our next program. And yes, as far as bloodshed is concerned, there has already been an enormous amount of bloodshed, for example, in Ukraine, where they say, 5,000 have died, when it's probably the closest the truth is that it's probably 50,000 have died. So, it's same thing in Syria. The numbers that they report are underreported by tens of thousands, if not some cases by hundreds of thousands. So, yes, that the amount of blood being shed is copious indeed. Yes, absolutely. Okay, your website again is roguemoney.net, and it's been a pleasure as always having you on. A lot of information, a lot of different perspectives offered that I think all listeners should pay attention to and research for themselves, because we don't ever. I say, don't take at face value what we say. Go and research it for yourself. You will prove it to your own self, and that's what everybody needs to do. So thank you for coming on, and I look forward to having you back on my program in the near future.
Absolutely. And then for anybody who wants to follow me on Twitter as well, it's at @theroguemoney. That's my Twitter handle. You can follow me. I'm always tweeting. And again, check out the website, roguemoney.net. Join it. It's a membership-only site. It's only $2.99 a month. It's less than the price of a cup of coffee from Starbucks, and you're getting a lot of cutting-edge information. Not just information, folks, solutions. Okay, solutions. Paul, thank you so much, my friend. God bless you.
You know the red sea's rising and the waves are looking kind of rough. the going getting kind of tough. You know I wanna keep on going, even though the going getting kind of tough. Well, the people are all uptight, and the barrel is rolling down on me. The people are all uptight, and the barrel is rolling down on me. And I'm afraid I just heard you say you want us to walk out in the sea. And I'm afraid I just heard you say you want us to walk out in the sea. You know the thunder is clapping and the lightning is flashing all around. Well, the thunder is clapping and the lightning is flashing all around. But there's a noise upon the waters and the thunder deep within the ground. There's a noise upon the waters and the ground is deep within the ground. Sometimes you may think that the Lord doesn't see or really care. The time may well come when you think God doesn't see or really care. No, no. But old Pharaoh could swiftly God knew just how to answer prayer. You know the Pharaoh could swiftly God knew just how to answer